and a resident in the College of Arts and Science and in the School of Education at Madras College. In that role, he has worked with the Center for Service Learning to engage students in reviewing the Underground Railroad freedom struggle as it unfolds in this region. Addison chairs the Freedom Trail Commission, striving to make the personalities and events that characterize the Underground Railroad more established in 2003. With further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Anderson. If you want to read some much more on his bio, and I'm quite sure he'll tell you some more, please, let's just welcome Dr. Anderson.
Asante Sano. Thank you very much, Mount Olivet Baptist Church.
Ladies
and gentlemen, for opening your doors to an old guy like me. I'm very pleased to be in these quarters for any number of reasons. Certainly, paramount tonight would be lifting up the first principle of Kwanzaa, the principle of Umoja. Now, when I came to Rochester in 1956, the language Kiswahili, which shapes much of what we say about Kwanzaa, was not in the curriculum at Rochester Institute of Technology, and probably not at school number 3, which is just around the corner from here, nor anywhere else. As a matter of fact, even though Rochester was vaunted as a city of liberal persuasion, on the day I arrived here at Rochester Institute of Technology, just down the street it was where the city school district is located today, the housing director looked at me when I asked for my room assignment in the dormitory and turned his back, saying, snarling, really, got no room for you. And at that time, I was 26 years of age. I had been 6 years in the United States Air Force. Almost 2 years that was spent on the island of Okinawa in the Pacific, where my unit was responsible for processing the photographs, the photography that the B-29 bombers made as they were flying over North Korea, dropping 2,000-pound bombs, killing people. Don't you understand? But my job on Okinawa was to process the film and compare the images on the film with the maps that said, that would confirm that they had gone over the right targets. Well, in all those years, all those many, many thousands of feet of film we processed, I had not seen the face of the enemy one time. But when that boy, he was suited, he was credentialed, he was paid well, said, I got no room for you. I knew what the game was, and I was ready to get him. Now, I had never seen the enemy that was supposedly somebody that the United States had to deal with, but there he was almost in my grasp, with a little woman, about this big, whispered to me and said, you got no room, huh? And I whirled on her. Now, she was as light complected as he was. She was a little white woman. But you see, she was wearing an apron. She was a cleaning lady, wearing an apron. And it sure enough looked like my mama's apron. And I had to unclench my fist in the presence of somebody that would remind me of my mom. And she said, tell you what you do, you go out of here, turn right, go down Spring Street, past Clarissa. Y'all know anything about Clarissa Street? Past Clarissa Street, you get to Favor Street. Used to go parallel to Clarissa, now it's not, I lost. Anyhow, you go to number 60 and ask for Miss Morris. Tell her Gazer sent you. I did what the lady said, And Miss Morris said, come on in, son. Miss Morris had never set eyes on me before. But there was a relationship between these two women. Call it Christian relationship, if you will. The deal was, because of their compassion, I was able to prevent myself from getting arrested and probably hurting that boy really bad. Really bad. Sometime later, we would be introduced to Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles. And do you know, as the longer I study the 7 principles, the more I understand, Dr. Maulana Karenga organized this in 1966, was it, brother? Yeah, but you know, that was coming through the community that I grew up in and met here after I left the housing director. I met community. I think that's made up of 2, that's a compound word, it's come to unity. Is that right? That's right. Well, and I believe that's what, ain't that the first principle? Community. Community. And so, if one keeps one's eyes and ears and heart open, yes, sometimes you get walked on, but there's always a bit of sunshine on the other side. And I think that's what we are doing when we celebrate or integrate Kwanzaa into our daily activities. And the fact that Mount Olivet Church would be able to sponsor, present, shape this program for these years is essential. And by the way, this gives us, it gives me the responsibility for everybody of saying thank you, parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties. I know you have never heard that one, but auntie, if you're in the crowd here, I want you to receive our gratitude for bringing the children, for making the effort to connect them with the story of come to unity, so that they won't have to get some punk in the collar and hurt him and end up behind jail. Got too many of our brothers in there now because they didn't take community with them. There wasn't enough elders around speaking to them about community, about the 7 principles before they were called Nguzo Saba, before Karenga was born, probably. You understand what I mean? So, but you want me to talk about Kwanzaa. Well, 1966, this scholar, Maulana Karenga, having done some work in Africa, having observed that the Kiswahili language was a language of trade, combination of some European language a little bit, but a lot of African languages up in there, to facilitate widespread communication across the continent and wherever residents of the continent would roam. And so we have this scholar using this, but we also have him reaching deep into his experience of community and reading what others have said about it and putting this together into this organized celebration called Kwanzaa. But you see, for it to really work, it's about practice daily. Umoja, community. Ms. Morris, my first landlady, was practicing community. Clarence Ingram. You know, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together because the GI Bill hadn't started good yet. They got my paperwork messed up. Clarence Ingram met me in Sandy and Lola's. Sandy and Lola gone now, but used to get some real meals in it. You know, 5 days a week I eat cornflakes. Keep the carton of milk on the windowsill. One day we got to go down to San Lotus. They would throw it down. Haddock. I never had haddock before. Sweet potato pie. Potato salad. Lettuce and tomatoes with mayonnaise. And lemonade. Woo! Yeah. It might get some change back too. What I'm talking about. Anyhow, these experiences that some of you have, and if you go to the center of the family Bible, I mean the old ones you don't mess with anymore because it's so fragile, but there's probably a little slip of paper in there. Some elder wrote down about who was born that day, or what they felt when they got up that day. Some of y'all might even did some of these radical things like tape recorded somebody that's going on now. Bring it out, transcribe it, share it around. Ooh, it might be a porch or two left up and down here. But in the summertime, you see an old lady sitting on the porch cutting off a corn. She said, "Come here, boy, come here." And there's a whole lot of wisdom in that corn that she's cutting off. Pay attention. Guide the children to check out what these elders have to say, because they are part of the root, part of the pathway to the ancestors. And Kwanzaa is about referencing the ancestors, because that's where the primers in the story, that's where the early chapters are. And we are obligated to string together through the various generations the story of come to unity. Come to unity. We're going to reference the symbols on the table, light the candle, representing the first principle, and pour libation. Now, every one of these things on the table is real. It has some function, but it's also symbolic. The first item going on the table is called the Mkeka. Say that with me. Mkeka.
Mkeka.
It's a mat woven from natural fibers. And it represents the foundation. So in that foundation would be those Yoruba brothers, those Fanti sisters, those great cousins from the Gambia, all those places from which the millions of Africans were kidnapped. They weren't slaves.
Ashe.
They were stolen people.
Ashe.
For you see, he came in the name of Jesus and other kings. He came hold and took hold of Fanti, Igbo, and Bobo. He laid hands on Ashanti, Fanti, and Twi. He took hold of Bamana, Bambara, Eve. Drove the captives down to the sea. By the twos and tens, the captives went down to the sea. And for days beyond counting, the captives seemed not to know who or whose they were. Right away, the making of a slave is to separate him, her, them from their story of community. But you know, not all those kidnapped people would not obey. They kept a little bit of who and what they had been.
And in the dark of night, and especially at the end of the year, they try to pass it on to their children. I know children, but they were children back then. Had to pass it on. And those children, in turn, passed it on to their children. And on down. Now, in the 20th century, after we had got Bilbo out of office and got Governor Wallace to stop fighting and carrying on, and got President Johnson to, put up some decent legislation, after we had accomplished what we wanted to with the civil rights effort, we began to lose the sense of responsibility to tell our story. Thank God there's a Mount Olivet Church. And thank God we have opened it up to this thing called Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is an instrument. It is not the end product. It's telling us there's an organized way in which you can look at from whence you have come. And it ain't about dissing anybody. It's about claiming our humanity and letting it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna
Let it shine.
Yeah, that's what we got to do. So, on top of the mat, we place the other symbols. This symbol, a 7-place candle holder, we call it Kinada. Kinada. Yeah, I know it's spelled with a K-I-N-A-R, but I'm told that the R sound is hard. Kinada. Kinada. And the Kinada represents the family. The family. And in the Kinada we place 7 Mishima or Mishima Saba, 7 candles. The one in the center, black, symbolizes the people. But the people come first. And then the people, in their turn, they struggle.
Sure.
Yes, sometimes struggle ends up with blood being shed. But the worst, let's put it this way, the most challenging struggle of all has always been about the mind.
Sure.
The struggle about the mind. So red then is more than just blood, more than, it is a struggle. The people come first, they struggle. And the consequence of the struggle is they at least pass the elements, the understanding, the comprehension of who they be and what they must preserve onto the children. Green, future. People struggle for the future. All right? Red, black, green. We also have here produce, fruit, vegetables, nuts, that which is naturally coming from the soil, hopefully unpolluted. It is called mazao, mazao, mazao. And it is a consequence of the people struggling and the people imbuing their youth with the responsibility to struggle to bring forth that which can sustain us in the next challenge ahead. Children, well, let's look here. And tell me this is corn, but in the Kwanzaa celebration we refer to it as muhindi, muhindi, collectively, there's more than one, or masoko is one ear of corn. Now look at it. It's 3 elements here. Got this here, these here kernels. I reckon that represents the children, right? And the children they hanging on to this here, what they call this thing in the center here? Cog. Sure don't look like mama to me. Yeah, sure look like mama to me. Look like mama when I lay on her belly as a little bitty boy down in Cincinnati. I still have that view. That helps to sustain me, y'all. Yeah. I come from a real live woman, not no slave, not no child of a slave. I come from a mother. Yeah. And then all this kind of dry now. I'm kind of dry myself, but when I was green, I was folded around the children as the shuck in the growing process is folded around the kernels. That sounds like protection to me. That sounds like walking like a natural man. So, Buhindi.